Hi, this is Randle here in Texas.
And I'm Matt here in Michigan. Today, Randall and I are reviewing the latest Star Trek series, Season 3 of Star Trek Discovery. It stars Sonequa Martin Green, Doug Jones, Anthony Rapp, Mary Wiseman, Wilson Cruz, David Ajala, Michelle Yeoh, and Oded Fair. It's created by Brian Fuller and Alex Kurtzman, who both have previous Star Trek writing credits.
Star Trek Discovery Season 3 picks up right where Season 2 left off, with the crew hurtling 900 years into the future, the 32nd century further than we have been in any previous iteration of Star Trek. This season was a longer season, and we are going to be getting into spoilers, so if you haven't watched the entire season yet, make sure that you do before you watch our review, and then make sure to come back and see if you agree or disagree with us. Matt has not seen Season 1 or Season 2 of Star Trek Discovery, so the biggest question on my mind is, do you think that this is Star Trek? Do you feel like it's Star Trek?
Oh yeah, Randall, I definitely think this is Star Trek. I do not feel that this is like some sci-fi show that we decided to put into the Star Trek universe. I feel like this is definitely Star Trek. This gives me a lot of feels, kind of like the Next Generation, Deep Space Nine kind of thing. I think if you enjoy those, you'll enjoy this show. And since I haven't seen, season 1 or 2, I don't know that you necessarily have to. Like, I just jumped in on season 3, and I really didn't feel lost at all watching this.
It's so interesting to me that you say that it doesn't feel like a sci-fi, with a Star Trek name pasted on it. Because Season 1, that is one of the biggest criticisms I heard about Season 1, was, oh my god, it is fantastic sci-fi, and it's gorgeous, it's beautiful, but it's not Star Trek. And I think Season 2 gets a lot better, but Season 3 really starts nailing it home for me. Season 3 is where I start seeing that the writer room is finally getting it. They're finally starting to meld, that they are really understanding what makes Star Trek. And because they're in the future, which is where Discovery should have been taking place all along, in my opinion, they can do a lot more without the confines of the established canon of the 23rd century, which they didn't care about in the first place. I do think that Season 3 is a great starting point if you're just hopping into Discovery. So much fun to watch this season, and it did start feeling a lot more like Star Trek.
Well, now you talk about like it jumping into the future and kind of like going on like why I think this definitely feels like Star Trek. And a good reason with that future is that because of that we can feel like we're exploring new areas, even though they're not necessarily like new. There may be places that we've seen in Star Trek and stuff before, but they're alien to our characters because they're some 900 or so years into the future and stuff. So we're basically learning and exploring these areas with the characters in this show. And I think that's a big element that's good about Star Trek, is when we actually see that exploration discovery thing, like no pun intended with the name Discovery.
You hit on a couple of really important things there, but one of the things that I will get into as a detractor, and I know it is kind of nitpicking for a show, but for a show that prides itself on its canon, you take Discovery and you move them 900 years in the future. So this is a ship from Kirk's era, or even a little bit before Kirk's era. They always say about 10 years before Kirk. And they just fit in. The ship Discovery gets a retrofit, and it gets upgraded with all the new tech and, new hull plating and like all of that good stuff. But like, imagine anyone from 900 years ago just taking them and putting them today in the 21st century. Man, I don't know that anyone could just, waltz right in there and just start making a difference. Even like Sir Isaac Newton level geniuses would probably have trouble doing that.
Yeah, it was kind of interesting too, kind of like with the ship as well as I was saying. I mean, granted, I'm sure they explore this more in like season 1 and season 2, but we have like the spore drive or whatever we have on Discovery, and then I don't know, like I guess like the ship kind of has like a personality or something. Doesn't really go into too much detail about that, but it's kind of interesting. Like those elements alone make this like 900-year-old ship like
the most
like
advanced
state
in
of
the
the art.
fleet.
Yeah, exactly. Most advanced. This is like old thing that just has these things that just make it better. That was just kind of interesting, I guess.
So here we are, 900 years in the future, and what's happened is a phenomenon called the burn, where all of the dilithium, or at least a very large amount of the dilithium in the known galaxy, basically combusts. It leaves the Federation crippled, it leaves Starfleet crippled, it leaves other races crippled, like the Vulcans and everything, that anyone who uses dilithium. And I kept thinking to myself, 900 years later, and we're still just like, we're still stuck with warp drive? We haven't come up with something better yet? But in the 23rd century, they came up with the spore drive, and they can move instantaneously from any point in the galaxy to another. And you're telling me that the finest minds in all of the Federation, and or even just any other alien race, hasn't come up with something better than warp yet? And it brings me back to another TNG thing. There's this episode of TNG called Relics where Scotty comes back. And it's been like, not even 100 years, like 70 years. And even Scotty, a really brilliant engineer, is completely confused and baffled by some of the technology he sees on the Enterprise D. He doesn't even get it right away, and he feels out of place. But this other crew on Discovery, man, they are all geniuses, and they are all going to fit perfectly into the 32nd century.
One thing I definitely did like about the show, I did like the characters, and I think they do a pretty good job of, showing you about the characters, even though there's already like 2 seasons. So if you're just jumping into the 3rd season, especially like one of the additions, or at least I'm pretty sure it's an addition to the 3rd season, Book, I think Book is excellent. He was one of my favorites, where even some of like the action scenes with him and like Michelle Yeoh's character too, those were parts of this show that I really enjoyed, and I really liked that character.
Yeah, this season is definitely a good season for additional characters, but I like Book, but if I had to point to one additional character that really does it for me, it's Admiral Vance, which is Oded's character that he plays. And I know he reminds you of other people, but in this, I think he nails his role as like a father, a mentor, a commanding officer, but also just someone who's doing his best to hold the fractured Federation and Starfleet together. I love the way he, his depiction and how he chose to do this role. I think is fantastic. Big supporter of that. I want to see more of Admiral Vance going forward in season 4.
Yeah, like you said, some of the things I kind of always think of when I've seen him is either like, the Mummy, or, Destiny 2, the game he voices Osiris or whatever. I was always thinking about that. But another character that I really liked, but it's disappointing I didn't see too much of, is Reno. I thought she was really funny in this. She just has those quirks and stuff that's good. And then, like, her interaction with Paul, in engineering and stuff. I really, really liked that dynamic and stuff in this show. Just wish I would have seen a little bit more of it.
Her character's also in season 2, and you do get a little bit more exploration with her character. But the less you see her, the more you cherish the moments you do see her. Because she is so much fun. I mean, Tig, the actor, she is actually a comedian as well. She just is. She has great comedic timing, and she has great delivery.
You're not allowed to have food in here.
This isn't food. It's candy. It's practically an accessory.
I would say season 3 is the strongest season of Discovery for the crew in general. Season 1, you really don't get to know the crew very well at all. And in season 2, you start to see them come together a little bit underneath Captain Pike. But man, season 3 is where you actually start to see them actually being treated not necessarily as main characters, but definitely as characters that we grow to love and care about more than we did in season 1 and season 2. Very, very good change to see that in a Star Trek show where we grow so in love with our crews,
One thing I would say, kind of thing, it was a little bit different. Our main character, I guess, Commander Burnham or whatever. I think they really did a good job with like her relationship with Book. That's one thing that I really enjoyed and stuff in this season 3. But I didn't really get as much of like her relationship with a lot of the crew, other than maybe like Tilly and Suro or whatever. But or Saru. But other than that, I mean, maybe they explore that more in like season 1 or season 2 or whatever, but I didn't really get as much of like it's more like we're told about her relationships with other crew members as opposed to like actually, experiencing it much in this season.
So, I mean, you're right. So, especially in conjunction with Saru, you get a whole bunch of their backstory in season 1, a ton. More in season 2, but a lot in season 1. And you get to see her interact a lot more with the crew in season 2 as well. But yeah, we're just to the point where we're just telling stories. It is a much better depiction of the crew in this season still, even with that. But moving on from the crew and the awesome portrayals, especially Tug Jones, I love him. If you had to pick, like an episode, like just one thing that stuck out to you, what episode did you think was your favorite of this season?
I don't know if there's really like an episode that kind of sticks out to me. I think there's kind of like parts a little bit of episodes and stuff. Like I really like we talked about like Star Trek kind of being like the exploration stuff. So we get kind of like at like the last few episodes where we have kind of like two parts. Like one, we're seeing a lot of like action stuff happening on like discovering stuff. What I really liked is what Saru was doing, where on the other planet where they're talking to this person, that's been there, by himself for forever kind of thing, never really seen the outside world kind of thing. That to me felt more like Star Trek and stuff. And so it's kind of like, it was like parts like that and stuff that I really enjoyed.
The last 3 episodes, they all, to end this season, they all flow together. They all tell the same story. And it's interesting because I saw a lot of people when they were doing like reviews or titles, it was like, this is Die Hard in space and it's awesome. I'm like, yeah, okay, but the more interesting story is what's happening with Saru and Dr. Culber down on the planet. Like, this is the Star Trek story that I'm much more interested in hearing about, which leads me right into my favorite episode of the season is Unification 3. Unification 3 is awesome because it is a follow-up 900, well, not quite 900, 800 years later to a TNG 2-part episode, Unification Part 1 and Part 2, where Spock is trying to unify the Vulcans and the Romulans. And it's an episode that they don't fire a single weapon in. It's all talking. It's all about how we're going to figure out the next puzzle piece for the storyline of the season. And it's about this relationship with Burnham, and her mother. And it is also just that episode where I saw, hey, now finally this writing room is really starting to pay attention to canon and care about canon and make good follow-up stories and good references to canon.
Yeah, I like that too. It's not just like, hey, wink, wink, here's something before. It actually feels like we were kind of like building up to that thing. And that's what I really like. Even like Picard had some of that too, where they had kind of like, hey, we had some elements that we had going on in like the Next Generation and stuff. And now we're expanding on them a little bit in this show too. So I'm glad that they're doing that with Discovery. You definitely have that callback like, oh yeah, I remember those things in the old shows.
Yeah, and Unification 3 is a fantastic experience because it also in some parts starts talking about, we know that in the Kelvin universe, Romulus's star went supernova, like Romulus is no more. The unification of the two races, of the two species of Romulans and Vulcan, is ever more important. And Spock in Unification Part 2, he says, like, hey, this is important work and it could take centuries. It wouldn't matter if it happens after I'm gone, but it will happen. And here you see the fruits of that, even if it is tenuous. So it's a really good thing. Like, they even renamed Vulcan. Vulcan's not even Vulcan anymore. It's Navarre, like it's a whole new thing and a whole new different world going on there. And it's a lot of fun. That's exploration of like you said, a spot that we know about, that we're familiar with, but 900 years in the future, no, not anymore.
One thing that kind of, I don't know, that really took me out, but had me like thinking a bit or whatever about that episode or whatever, is that's where you like find out, or at least, in season 3 you find out.
That's when you find out.
That's when I found out that Burnham is actually like Spock's sister kind of thing. I'm like, what? Really? She's Spock's sister? I guess like adopted sister or whatever, but still, it's kind of interesting because, I kind of feel like her character is kind of like a mix between like Spock and Kirk or whatever. I mean, I would argue, more so Kirk, and she may be even more Kirk than Kirk. I mean, she has that same, thought and stuff to her, like, I don't believe in a no-win situation. She actually says that in this show, so, yep.
Michael Burnham's character as the main character in this show is such an interesting thing. In season 1, people, and I think very fairly, labeled her as a Mary Sue. She could do everything and she could do no wrong. She was just perfect at everything she did. Season 2, they definitely dial that back a little bit. In fact, she basically gets slapped down by Spock in season 2. Like, not everything is about you, Michael. Not you don't know everything. You think you do, And in season 3, I think they finally find a really good middle ground of, we need her to be hyper intelligent. We need her to be this Kirk Spock, conglomeration, because she's our main character. But she still needs help. She still needs other people. You see that in season 3 way more than you do into the previous seasons. And I'm happy for it. It's much better for it.
One thing I didn't like as much, and it's not that I like the character, I really like the character, whatever, but is other members of the crew are just kind of like, oh, really, you're sending, like, Tilly out on, like, a mission and stuff? And then just, like, a few episodes later, she's, like, named, like, Saru's, number 1 kind of thing. And everyone was just like, yeah, you got this. And even though, she kind of, like, doubts herself a little bit, it's kind of weird that, it's almost like the crew had, like, this about face. But not as I think they were definitely, teasing up to it. You could just see, like, her interaction with Saru. And I think that she, as a character, has a good story arc for her. She has a lot of growth in this season.
Yeah, she does. And, the thing is, I'm okay with it because I see that as the crew's being supportive of a colleague and a friend. And that's, like, the Starfleet way, That's the Starfleet that from TNG, really, where if Deanna Troi comes up to you and says that she's having weird dreams, you don't just write it off and be like, she's crazy. No, like, they help each other. They support each other. That's how a Starfleet crew do, Matt.
One thing I do want to say about this series, like, I think I said at the beginning, I don't think you necessarily need to see 1 and 2 to, like, enjoy this. Like, I never felt like I was lost watching this season 3 at all. And I really enjoyed watching it. I was going on like, all right. And I think part of it is because we're in the future, like, we're learning as, like, the characters are learning about this new place.
If you made it this far into the conversation, congratulations. I do understand that this is going to be a longer video of ours, and we've talked about lots of things in season 3. I just want to take a moment to talk about Star Trek and the fandom, and it's obviously important to me. I'm a very big Star Trek fan, and I care about it. And I think that season 3 of Star Trek Discovery does something very, very good. In context, if you think about the original series, TOS, it's filmed in the 60s, and it's a product of the 60s where we're in this constant Cold War with the Soviet Union, and that's the Federation and the Klingons. That's the topics that they're talking about, and you see that played over again and again and again with the Klingons and even the Romulans in the original series. And then you get to TNG, and you really forget that a lot of the established fandom from TOS hated TNG. They didn't want anything new. They wanted the original crew back. They wanted Kirk and Spock and everyone back on TNG. They didn't want the TNG, and now it's part of the best of Star Trek. Very few fans are ever going to say anything different about that. Although I say DS9 is best, but But if you think about it, it's the late 80s and the 90s, and what is TNG and DS9 and Voyager talking about is, this golden age, like this utopia of the Federation. And well, look at the 90s, everything was great, it's cheery, and things were going good. It was a reflection of the time. Season 3 of Discovery does the exact same thing. Now we're talking about, we have all the technology in the world, we have all of everything we could possibly want, but things are still disconnected, disjointed. We're still just as unreachable as we could possibly be, spread out over distances. I think season 3 of Discovery really starts to reflect the society that we're currently living in, and that is part of what makes it good Star Trek. And if you are someone who has been holding out on Discovery, season 3 is great.
Oh yeah, I'm definitely excited for season 4. And, Grant, everyone's watching this, probably already seen it. I mean, if not, I think you should definitely check this out, especially if you're a fan of, like, The Next Generation or Deep Space Nine or even, like, the Calvin universe, Star Trek movies and stuff. I think you will really enjoy this one. I mean, I know I did, kind of thing. And, granted, I like Picard and stuff too, and, I kind of like, like the character and stuff, but I do like these new characters, and I can't wait to see what's going to happen in season 4 as well.
So we have a whole playlist of Star Trek. Make sure to check out that playlist. If you like this video, make sure to give it a like. If you want to see more, subscribe to our channel and ring the bell icon so that way you are always notified when we are posting new videos. We post new videos every Monday and Thursday. Also, make sure to check out our Facebook page. We will always post the day before what we're going to be posting the next day. For now, I am Randle here in Texas. Live long and prosper.
And I'm Matt here in Michigan. Have a good day, everyone. Next time on No Market Media. Please consider checking out some of our other videos.